What is going on, everybody? Hope you're having a great start to your Q4. It's the 3rd of October right now when I'm doing this video. So we're just gone into Q4. Of course, the priority is now planning. So I've got a little sort of scenario-based analytical thing created to try to help me better manage and understand the Q4 that I am looking to achieve, right? Because usually I go into Q4s and the goal always is pretty much, fundamentally the same. It's to spend as much money as possible, although make sure you're spending it on stock that will sell and is selling and will be profitable, and that you don't buy too many just because it's Q4. You're not buying 1,000 because you're like, well, it's Q4, just buy that, waste my money basically, throw money away. Obviously you have to make sure each of those things is done properly, right? But usually there is a lot of products, a lot of things sell, and you want to basically just get things in as fast and spend your money as fast and keep repeating that cycle for as long as you can until Q4's over. That's kind of fundamentally how it always is. But obviously it's always good to look over figures and numbers, because definitely when you're not, you grow above like 100 grand, 200 grand a year, within those kind of sales, it's not so difficult. Stuff like logistics, how long does your prep center take to send in whatever amount of stock you want? If I'm looking, just as a quick, I'll go over this later in a minute, but if I'm looking to send in 24,000 units in, not in December, but for December, let's say that's within November, well, 24,000 divided by, let's say, 4 weeks, that's 6,000 a week. Well, what is my average weekly shipment from my prep centers? And it's basically about breaking all these numbers down so you can kind of figure out where and what you need to do. Either is it that you need to front load stock early because it is, potentially impossible for your prep center to, get more stock in than they are already getting in. It depends on who you're using, right? So you would have to look into it. Maybe you have a second prep center that you're looking to get on board with. I can see my weird computer is like glitching. Get on board with in anticipation for having to use 2 or 3. I mean, last year I used 3. This year currently I'm using 2, and I may have to take on a 3rd. It just depends, right? Because I'll speak to the people and I'll say, what is your capabilities over, I'd say, within the next, from the end of October, something around those periods. Even from now, potentially for 3 months, because that could be like a 3-month temporary contract, something that they take on. And I want to get an idea for what they are potentially willing to be able to provide me in terms of the service, right? So can they double or triple the unit count without having any negative side effects, such as delayed in shipments? So they put me sending 3 times as much in terms of the shipments if they just can't send it, even if they have it, right? That's the one thing you don't want. Stock, you're doing everything your side, you're hitting your sales that you wanted, you hit all your targets that you've, extrapolated from like now, you've built up like a little bit of a plan, you're hitting your targets, you're buying the units, they're just not getting sent in time. Or you're buying 30,000 units and only 10,000 got sent in over October, and you're like, well, now as a backlog, now I can't get that stock away from that prep center it starts. So really figuring out all of these like underlying potential issues, running scenarios, and also reverse engineering potential Q4s from bygones to be bygones. So still my best Q4 ever was the COVID year, and I like to use this as a framework. Now the figures will obviously be completely different. What do I mean by that? Is that, of course, I'm going to have potentially different products, different advertising costs, different fees back then. So it's not necessarily to reverse engineer this like in terms of the specifics. It's about reverse engineering this in terms of the sales. So why am I talking about sales, right? Who gives a shit about sales? Well, obviously, not to say that it necessarily means that, but I mean, you could do my goal here, 500 grand over Q4. You could be making a loss by doing it, right? But of course, that can happen, and there's obviously a potential for that to happen if you have no idea what you're doing and you just throw money at stuff and you're making a loss on all your sales, and then you've got a VAT bill. But if you've been doing it long enough and you understand what's going on, you know what's going on. As well as that, a lot of the products I sold historically were kind of high volume, smaller profits. Not necessarily in December. This is actually the December one here, and you can see that the ROI is actually, you can see 51%, and here 38, and here 32. So obviously got 2 in December. So you can see, see in December usually the ROIs are higher because there's a premium on products, because the number of sales on high volume sales product on Amazon, they sell, let's say for every 100 per day that they would usually sell, they're now selling 1,000. Therefore, that means that the number of sellers usually goes down rather than up over time. And as you push further and further into December Q4, you usually find that the price goes up because there's less sellers ultimately, and then you make more profit. Easy, that's pretty much it. So, but a lot of what I'm doing now is I'm not just arbitrage, it's a mix. So I'm doing some bundle stuff, I'm doing some different, what do they call it? Different types of bundles, I guess you could call it. Some more simple that I've created a long time ago, but are still specific or potentially related to Q4. And then some more newer stuff that is maybe not even Q4 related, but what I'm trying to say is that the profits are usually better on those. And so if I'm going for that 500 grand target, the profit should be better than what they were when I was doing 100% standard arbitrage back then. There we go. So, because I know that, obviously, what other things have I thought about? Well, I built up a little bit of a plan leading into Q4. So something similar where I was basically looking for July, August, September, leading into Q4, building out a plan in terms of what I'm trying to achieve. Unfortunately, in terms of a positive, what I actually thought I was going to achieve was completely wrong. That is going to be a potential thing with Amazon because you just don't know how many people are going to buy your products. You don't know what products you potentially will find and which products, if you're creating bundles, will be good versus bad or okay. You don't really know the distribution of all that. You can only do what you can do up front, and the rest kind of like is you're just blind. You're blind to it until it happens. So, in some sense, building some sort of predictive data points to then go off isn't always going to end up with what you expect. For example, I could aim for 500 grand and then reverse engineer that, which is what I've done, which I'll talk about. But I might find that I actually do 600 or 800 grand or 400 grand, but the same profits is what I was hoping for, right? Because there's not, because there could be, I'm doing 400 grand because the prep centers are just at capacity, and there's certain things that you just really can't always plan. But what you can do is you can break down some real simple bits, it looks like there's some random numbers everywhere on the screen, but break it down simply into some form so that you can at least do what you can do. And then you can also have scenarios in place for knowing, right, if I need another prep center, I've already spoken to one and they're okay for me to basically get stuff sent to them. If I just basically email them or call them and say, right, on Monday, I'm sending stuff to you. You've already got these little things in place. Same with credit. Yeah. It's like, what credit have you got available in the event that there is this insane opportunities and you'll be stupid not to use that credit to maximize? Well, if you haven't got any credit cards right now, again, it's not financial advice, I'm not a financial advisor. You haven't got any credit cards right now because you're like, no, I don't need it. I've got 50 grand in the bank. That's plenty for me for Q4, blah, blah, blah. You get there, then you think, oh my God, imagine if I had another 30, 20, whatever it is. I could have there's like 5 or 6 products that are literally tripling, making 200% ROI. And I could just spend 10, 20 grand on just these 10 products and I could sell them really quickly and easily because they're selling 50 a day or something. But you can't because you haven't prepared for that. So it's just about making all those preparations. Enough of that. Let's get into the numbers. Right. So what have I done here? Well, simply to start with, I just broke down the number of units sold. I mean, you can literally see 8,000, 15, 24 here, okay? Now, it doesn't necessarily mean I have to sell this many units in these time periods because at the moment, my profits and ROI, basically the ROI and the profits are, I can't remember exactly what my ROIs are. No, I can't. I haven't looked. I actually can't remember. I believe my margin, I don't know, ultimately. I should have looked before, but they're not like this, for example. I mean, it could be like this potentially, but obviously this is combined with a 38% average ROI and then a 32. It'd be interesting to see what it is. Let me just pause the video for now. Okay, I looked. It is pretty much the same as this. So my current profits, and this is going off, say, September's data, is this. obviously you can see here in October at that period, which is now where we are, it was at 32. Well, I'm in September, previous month of October, in case you didn't know, is at 55%, I believe. Pretty much the same as this. So, and again, like definitely if you pop into Q4, you'll be able to maximize ROI, sorry, as in deep into Q4, you'll be able to maximize ROIs because, to quite simply put, you know, if you're running out of stock and the sellers are dropping off, or you have your own listings and again, you only have a certain amount of supply, you can't get any more supply in. Maybe there, you literally, when you've got 100, but it's selling 40 a day. Well, of course, you're probably going to raise your prices, right? Because you don't want to sell out in 2.5 days. You want to try to squeeze a bit of extra profit out, spread it over 7 days. So you're going to make 15 sales a day and you raise it a couple of quid. And then therefore, if you do that across the board with, the seasonality of seasonal products, basically, then of course you'll get, I don't know, 65, 70%. So, even though it's not slightly correct in terms of me sort of like trying to mirror this, I just know if I hit the goal of 500,000, then the profits are the same / better. They are better. They should be better, but that's to say, to be conservative, they are the same or better, right? So then what I had to do is I had to basically work out, well, how many units do I need to be selling in each month to match this? Now, it doesn't obviously mean that you have to match it exactly. You could do 800,000 in October and 13,000 in November, or whatever it ends up being. Obviously, as you go through the month, you can also figure out, like compare, okay, I'm halfway through October, how many have I sold? That kind of thing. And you can basically work through it like that. And obviously track it as you go. Don't just wait till the end and go, oh, how did I do? Because the whole point of getting this is so that you can every week, every day, if you want, track against it and see if you need to be improving in certain areas, or there's things you need to be doing, basically. You can see here, this is just a little bit of data that I pulled off anyway. Basically, how many units I purchased in August, how many units I purchased in September. So you can see here, like, in October, in this period, I sold 6,807. But this month of September, I actually purchased nearly 10,000 units. So I should, in theory, be able to sell, basically the units that I purchased now. Obviously, there'll be stuff that I buy in October that I will still sell in October. But yeah, this will, that just be simple, it will cover this, right? But obviously, then you start to look at the quantities potentially required for November and December, they push up. So I also then got my VA to look at how many units did the prep centers, I have 2, send over September, because I want to understand how many they're able to fulfill. Now, yes, I could send, like I said, much more to the prep centers, but can they ship it? Doesn't matter if I send 50,000, can they send 50,000? Or are they going to send 12,500 or 15,000? So you're still going to have a massive backlog. You don't want that. You want it to be, the way I'm trying to do it as much as possible is like a very clean in and out. So basically, it's almost like in like everything that came last week is going out this week. Everything that comes in this week will go out next week, and it's kind of, you don't want it to be dragging on, where there's a wholesale order from 2.5 weeks ago that's sat there because there's loads of little orders they're doing. It just start getting into a mess, and also it'll start to confuse you in terms of what have you bought or what haven't you bought. In terms of looking at Amazon, everything's out of stock. You think you haven't bought it, you go and rebuy it again. I've done that so many thousands of times. You go and buy another 200 units and you figure out that the prep center still hasn't sent something from 3 weeks ago, which you already bought 300. So you've now got 600, and it's just because there's the flow of stock is not consistent enough, and you think, well, why is it, what's going on? Because there's so many products you're trying to manage over that period of Q4. It just turns into a bloody nightmare. Then I started going off, okay, so how much do I have to spend, and what's the spend basically gonna have to be? This is the spend here. I know it's not really clear, but the required spend as of these periods back in the day was this. So I had to spend this is basically what I spent, £268,806. This isn't exactly, this is going off of my average price for the period and going off of some other metrics that I've got. But give or take, obviously I could have bought stuff at the end of December for January. This is obviously not included. Right? This is just the spend required for the sales that took place in those months, not the stuff that was still left. You got this thing, okay? So in your mind, you'd be like, okay, quite simply, if I spend 268 grand, then I'm going to do 500 grand in sales. Obviously, that isn't direct cash injection. That could be 90,000, 100,000, 120,000 of cash that is turned into taking obviously profits from each month and rolling them over in a cumulative sales spend of 268,806.99p. Okay. I then cross-reference this with if I was basically going to, yes. So if I was selling these number of units, it's not clear because I literally did this earlier and I haven't updated it to make it pretty, but I don't really need it pretty for myself. If I base off the current metrics in terms of my average buy price, which is down here, over the last 2 months, you could do it back. You could, depends on, you want to keep, if you want to do an average unit cost, do it based off of, that makes sense, the same style of products. Because obviously when you come into Q4, sometimes if you do it in October or in November, you're going to have a probably higher potential buy price because you're buying slightly more expensive gifts that you can sell on, right? Or you might be buying slightly different products than you usually would buy, therefore it's potentially going to be skewed, but you know, you can still use it. It's more of an average. I kind of ended up using £6, even though it's $5.77, just to give me a higher cost of good, even though actually it would be a bit less cost of good, if you get what I mean. But I'd rather be cautious. So for example, the end product is, I actually need to spend 211,571 to get the same amount of units sold, and that would actually bring me in, let's have a look. I did this for 211571 35 times 2.6. Yeah, so that spend would get me about what was this? Yeah, so that spend would actually bring in, well, that's actually the sales I did for the quarter, this quarter, 528, but I put the goal of 500,000 just because it's cleaner. But actually, I guess this goal should match what the data is actually related to. But an extra 28 grand here and there is nothing. So yeah, actually you would have to spend this amount based off of my current sale price, average sale price of £15, based off my current average unit cost, but I rounded it up to £6 instead of $5.77. But of course, if I wanted to, potentially just match this to keep it simple, so although clearly it's not going to produce the identical results, right? Like just because I sell these many units in this period does not mean that the prices of everything I'm selling are the same as they were in this historical Q4, right? Of course not. But it's more of like a gauge. You want to have a feel, just get an idea of what you need to spend and what you need to do. So again here, the spend to give the sales. If I'm looking to get literally £68,604.51p in October, I'd have to spend £27,441p, £41.80p, yeah, and so on and so on. Now again, obviously that's a rolling total, so you wouldn't have to spend that, then find another 65,000 and spend that, then find another 118,000, obviously part of the same roll through. But just as an example, my last month's sales in September was 75,000. Yeah, 75,000. So I'm already, if I even just match the same as I did last month, I'm actually over by 7 grand, whatever it is. You see what I mean? So again, like it's not like it's going to be clear cut in terms of, it might be completely different. It might be that you want to do the same as something like this, but you want to add on 30% or double it or whatever you want to do, right? Because the way that I found is that as soon as the COVID period, which is like 3 or 4 years ago now, 3 years ago, I had like 20,000 units. I was like balls deep, basically in stock. Definitely back then, right? And I just had like the most easy and phenomenal year. It was just effortlessly easy to sell everything. And I know everyone else felt like that, but I already had the stock in Amazon. Like you should have seen the months before this as well, but they were great. I had all the stock in Amazon. Pretty much before COVID hit. I had like 20,000 units because I was just going hard. And then obviously when that came, it was just even easier. And I was like, this is sick. But now it's more like, obviously you haven't got that. I actually quite like it that you haven't got that luck, because that luck gives you that false sense of security. Definitely for me, it did that. It made me think, this is easy. I'm going to do 2 million next year and 5 million the year after. This is easy. But because obviously just because you're doing what you're doing doesn't mean that outside environmental factors, external factors aren't going to cause issues, cause changes, which is obviously the boom of the online purchasing. But now it's actually taken me like, I guess, 2 years, because this year happened. Then the next year was horrible because like there was like the storage issues where you couldn't. I had to sell 3,000 units before basically my limit was like 12,000 units I could store in Amazon. I had like 15 or 16,000 units in Amazon because I had 20,000 originally. And obviously then I carried on sort of acting as if it was in this sort of bubble. I guess it was a bubble, this sales bubble. And then it took me like 3 months just to get rid of enough stock to actually send new stock in. So basically the whole of that year was kind of like spent wasting just trying to basically sort everything out. Then obviously Q4 come. It wasn't as great, but it's still Q4. It still does all right? And then I had another year of just sort of not really doing a huge amount. Really kind of just sort of trying to figure out my method, or a method of how do we tackle this long term? In terms of where we want to go, because really you want to be building something that isn't reliant on external factors. For example, it was great to have that COVID year, but and these things will happen again now and then, here and there and everywhere. And if you're lucky in the right place, you'll capitalize on that. But you want to really be building something where it's you have done stuff which has caused it to look like this, rather than something that you don't have control of caused it. Yeah. And at the time, you probably don't even really care, and you just get woo. But obviously, for a bit more of a mental sort of stability, stuff that you are capable of influencing, and if I do more of this, it will get better. If I do less of, it's very simple, But obviously, COVID stuff. If I do more of what, the sales haven't 10x because you've done anything. Basically, all I've done is put the stock there. And that's it. And so it's kind of like, when it can get cut off at any time. But if you're doing it and you're obviously staying, up to date with everything, and you're trying new things, it shouldn't go backwards. It should only stay the same or go forward. Well, if it stayed the same as this, it would be sick, right? But it didn't. It went backwards to 5x. If you kind of get what I mean. Like for every 5 sales that were getting done during the COVID year, it went back to 1, or even less than that potentially. So then I built, anyway, enough of me rambling. Then I built this out, worked out, what I roughly need. And all I'm going to really do on this, let's see what I have here. I literally just built up a little bit of a weekly rough spend. How much do I need to be spending per week in cash terms on stock? In November, I need to be trying to spend 29,563, but by November as well, with my account, so maybe I'm a little bit of a lucky one, and so are other people, is that I can get, anything that clears today in terms of an order, I can withdraw tomorrow. So as you roll into Q4, cash flow becomes a little easier for those people, because at the end of, let's say, the beginning of December, everything that's sold, let's say I did a 20 grand day yesterday, and there's 12 grand that's cleared, well, I can withdraw that 12 grand today. So obviously I can get that in a couple of days. Yeah, there's still a bit of a delay, but I can get that in a couple of days and potentially turn that over twice more. But people that have to wait 14 days for that reserve to be held, you're basically getting paid from 2 weeks ago sales, right? The 2 weeks ago held reserve is getting paid out now, but obviously your sales were a lot less back then. You see? And so, because obviously as it gets into December, it just skyrockets. And so for those people, you don't really have any window in December to capitalize. Yes, you're still going to get payments, but in terms of if I'm selling 20 grand a day of stock, and I get that in a couple of days, so I get it on I get 20 grand sales on the 1st of December. I get that money on the 5th, so I've now got, I don't know, but that's just one day. So yeah, 12 grand. I can spend that, get an next day delivery for whatever, maybe potentially wholesale. It depends. It has to work out logistics, time for shipping, prep center ability to prep and ship, and various things. But you could do it if you're doing a smaller shipment of wholesale, and then getting that back in to obviously get a couple more rotations of that 20 grand day. Pretty much, you just literally mimic the day in your buys. But if you haven't got 12 grand on hand because you're still getting paid 5 grand from your mid-November's sales, so you've got half. In theory, you're getting half now because you're doing a 10 grand day beginning of December, but in the middle of November you're doing 5 grand days. So your actual output from Amazon's kind of half what it should be, really. And so there is a lot more. That's definitely why short-term lending is important. Stuff to do with like having ability to have credit cards and stuff, just for that very short period of time within mid-November to mid-December. So 4 weeks, pretty much, maybe 5 weeks. Just so that you can capitalize on a couple of little rotations of stock from buying to selling and all that kind of thing. Basically, I just built up a little bit of a weekly average, just so I can go, how much did I spend last week? Is it close? How many units did I send in last week? How many have I sent in the last 2 weeks? How many are still sitting at the warehouse? Not my warehouse, but prep center. How much money have I been spending? What is my average? Basically, you could create some sort of formula where you're updating your average spend. So you can do it weekly. What is your average spend per week? And you just add it every week, add it in. What is your average sale price? Is it going up or is it going down? And then obviously changing that every week and then getting a bit more of a reflective data explanation to yeah. I'm basically just doing that. And so, for example, I'm going to try to hit these targets, but that will actually cause me to do about 684,000 in sales based off of the current data and products I'm selling. Yes, certain, obviously it's Q4, so it's like stuff that isn't really selling now, that's Christmassy, will do a lot different. And so, these figures would change. Like, I'm not, that could be 550, 650, but basically I'm just trying to get enough data to give me to point me in the right direction. Because until you actually go and do it, you don't really know what's going to happen, right? That's the thing. And you can, the best way that I like to is just look at loads of Q4s, look at your averages. So just if you've got 6-7 Q4s, great. Use those averages. Maybe not the first one because it would probably be a bit crap, but all the rest, and then literally come out with some nice numbers to give you a guide, goalpost basically to go, okay, I want to try to do, send in 10 grand of stock in October. The goal is 6807, but if I do that, then I got a little bit less pressure on in November. I can send in 10 again or 12 or something like that, and that might be that, but relieve the stress on the prep center, which is good because I want to, make sure I can get in the whatever your play is. Maybe I need to open up and get another prep center on board, and don't use them until the event that I might need to use them for Q4. If because the one thing that I find as well is that you don't really know what's going on with these prep centers, month to month, week to week. So being visually responsive in terms of looking at what stock has been shipped and how much stock is left at the prep centers, and then managing the flow of new stock to prep centers based off of how much they have left. If they've got a lot of your stock, don't send it to that prep center, send it to another prep center. Even if some of the prep centers are slightly more expensive, because would you rather pay a slight premium, like 10-20p on a unit, but make sure your units are getting there and you're selling them and you're hitting the targets, blah, 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 and maybe have an extra 600 quid bill at the end of Q4, just for those, those items that, yes, you wish you could have gone to your main prep center, for example, maybe it's cheaper, but you've not. But ultimately, I'd rather actually try to maximize what I can for a small fee. I always like to do that. So for example, getting in stock a little early, if you see that there's no way my prep center is going to be able to do that many units, maybe you're going to have to get stock in a little early. What is the downside of that? Then there's going to be some long-term storage fees or storage fees at Amazon. So am I willing to pay like an insurance premium? I always call it this, which is people get confused with what I say, but I'm basically getting stock in early. Yeah, so I'm getting it in early. Therefore, I'm paying storage fees of £500, let's say. I'm doubling it for a month. That's my insurance premium. And you think, what do I mean? Well, I'm paying £500, like an insurance bill, like you would pay insurance, a premium when you pay like an excess, for the safeguard of knowing my stock's in Amazon, basically. Because if I don't do that and I try to send it like right at the last minute because of that reason, I don't want to pay long-term storage fees or something, there is a chance that my stock will not go and book into Amazon in selling time, and therefore that is like my insurance lapsing. But if it you don't take it, it basically just failed, whatever you want to call it. But if I've got that premium, that insurance premium behind me, it's not going to have that outcome. It's going to sell. You get what I mean? So it's basically protecting me from having a load of shit stock sat there over Q4, or like advent calendars after advent season or whatever. I'm not saying they don't sell. No, people are going to say they sell in December. yes, but not if you have 600, baby. Yeah, that's not a bad idea for an advent calendar, is it? A Baby Bell advent calendar, different flavors. I meant to say a Milky Bar. Going a bit insane. I'm basically doing it like that. So I'm going to leave the video there. Talking very, very fast in this video. Lots of bits and bobs I went through, but not to say this is by any means like the cleanest looking thing I've ever done, but it's enough for me. Like, I don't need to. I'm not some technical whiz. You just like to, create pages and pages of formulas. I pretty much just start with the basics. I'm literally just like, what's my goal and what did I do before? And then I'm like, oh no, I don't even know where I'm going with this half the time. I'm just like, basically, I'm adding. That's why you can see the positions of these everywhere. It's like, it's not even in any order. It's like I started here and I went down here and I added this, and I added this, and I added this rounding column. I don't even know what that column is anymore. No, I didn't forgot what this column is. And then I did this. But yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna leave the video there, everyone. Hope you liked it and got a little bit of insight into what little things that I think about. Most, the main priority is just make sure you're pushing. Make sure you're buying the stock that needs to be bought. Make sure you're doing all your due diligence beforehand, checking what products sold previous Q4s, looking at what's doing well right now. Looking at what offers you can get, preparing your potential capital if and when you might need it. You may never need it. Preparing prep centers, speaking with them, seeing what's going on. Figuring out times in terms of how basically, for example, supermarkets, they get busy in December. So if you're buying a lot from supermarkets, do you need to book in some Christmas slots now? Like literally all of these different, there's like 30 scenarios, not scenarios, but 30 points that you could go over and basically just like figure out the answers for now, so that what is gonna, as things crop up, you don't have to go, what about that? Like, no, don't do that now. Like, you wanna figure it out ahead of time, and you don't need to be rushing. And then you can literally dedicate 100% of your time purely to what the importance is, which is buying the stock, sending it in, getting it in, selling it fast, buying more, sending it, and then there's Christmas is over. So I'll leave it there. See you next time. Bye.